control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we are talking about the 32nd episode of Season 1 of The Outer Limits. This is also the final episode of Season 1 of The Outer Limits. We've gone through 32 of these. This is an unusual one. It was actually produced quite a bit earlier in the run, the 24th in production, but it was the airing was deferred for quite some time for reasons I'll get into. This was written by Joseph Stefano, who also wanted to direct, and Leslie Stevens wanted him to direct and support him out, but the network just wouldn't have it for some reason. They didn't like certain. They didn't like their. I don't know. They kicked back, and Leslie Stevens actually threatened to sort of stop production of the series if they didn't relent, but he decided not to go that far. Joseph Stefano did not know about this, and he was kind of surprised when he found out. Apparently, for whatever reason, they didn't want a writer to be directing here. Joseph Stefano was quite heavily involved in The Outer Limits, and the studio threatened things like moving their time slot from a fairly good slot, I think it was 7:30 on a Monday night, to against someone like Jackie Gleason or something like that. Really not. Something that would have killed the show, basically. And I've read about this kind of thing. Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek had a lot of troubles along these kinds as well with Star Trek. It's a thing, right? It's a political, I don't know what it is. This one, however, first aired on May the 4th, 1964. So almost, as I'm recording, this was just over 60 years ago, this aired. Interesting one. It got some big names. Vera Miles is in it. Vera Miles, who from Psycho. So Cedric Hardwicke, a kind of well-known sort of movie actor, and this was his very final performance, in fact. So Cedric Hardwicke and David McCallum, who we have seen before in, for example, the Six Finger episode. They liked David McCallum because he gave great line readings. You know, they felt he could deliver almost any line properly, no matter how silly and outrageous it was. So they felt he was a good match for this particular one. It's a fever dream of a story, really. Joseph Stefano was kind of I mean, the thing it obviously most riffs on is Le Diabolique, the French movie thriller about two women who are in the thrall of a man who's a bit of a beast, and they decide to murder him, but then his body disappears, so they're not sure if he's dead or alive or what's happening. And it's kind of riffing on that. There's also a bit of riffing on Psycho. Now, interestingly, I believe Joseph Stefano did write an initial script for Psycho, which got rejected, but he was kind of channeling it in here because it's about a sort of lonely place off the road, two women in peril, which, you know, Psycho, and so on. So there's a touch of that. Now, essentially, it starts with a horrible man, a young, good-looking man, admittedly. We see him in his Speedos. No, you know, he looks buff. who has these two women in front of both. They're both his mistresses, I think. I'm not really sure. They're in the French countryside. He's got a Rolls Royce, a white Rolls Royce, and we see this white Rolls careening down quite bad roads, and it looks like, oh man, you shouldn't treat a Rolls Royce like this. But his name is Andre Pevin, and he's got his these two women, Cassia and Leonora, in the car, and he decides he wants a bit of a swim, so he puts his speeders on and is standing in this lake, and he insists the women come and serve him a drink and walk into the water, ruining their high heels. He makes great play of this, great pleasure of this. They're both striking looking women. Interestingly, one's kind of blonde and one's kind of dark, and one's got a white dress and one's got a dark dress. That's kind of contrasting to each other imagery. One, he says, must serve the drink. No, mix the drink, and one must serve him the drink. One must pour, and one must serve him. But the more forthright one says they poison him. Essentially, they use a leaf of something they called the Thanatos tree, a single leaf in this cocktail, and it's enough to poison him. And he talks about ruining their fine stiletto heels. And he toasts to being able to blackmail Leonora's father in London, because they're going to London, and then he just dies. But he's got a weird smile on his face. They stuff him in the boot and go and drive off, thinking getting rid of the body, finding someone to bury it. But Leonora, who's the weaker of the two, kind of gets unhinged about it all. Especially when they see a funeral procession. And then night falls, they hit a thunderstorm, and the rest of the story takes place during this thunderstorm. It's a dark and stormy night story, so it's a proper thriller kind of thing. Leonora, well, they stop to check if Andre's alright, and open the boot and look at the body, but a lightning strike makes Leonora think he moved, and she runs off, which means Cassia has to go catch her and try and calm her down. And they see a weird figure standing near them, who could be Andre, right? They're kind of freaked out. Leonora runs even further once he sees this. They find a house, and it looks like an older blind man's house. His name's Colas, and this is Sir Cedric Hardwicke, and he says that they're welcome to stay, and he talks about Mr. Hobart's not at home, but will return soon. It's a big house. It's very German existential kind of looking house. It wouldn't be out of place in one of those early Frankenstein films, for example. But so basically they infer that this man must be the servant, because he talks about Mr. Hobart not being at home. And the place is full of weird clocks, but there's one broken with a clown face, and there's all sorts of weird stuff in this. Weird clocks kind of thing. And then Mr. Hobart returns. His name's Tone Hobart. Tone. Interesting first name. And it's David McCallum, who kind of talks in flowery way, but kind of a slightly sinister way. He talks about time and how you can tilt time and change things and stuff like that. And then he reckons he can possibly turn back time, which means Andre may get reanimated. And indeed, Andre does appear eventually. Now, there's a lot of very odd exposition. This almost feels Lynchian. It's a really odd fever dream kind of episode, isn't it? The story's kind of incoherent. You can kind of make it out from what's going on, but it's not really paying attention to the story. It's just weird. It's just a weird... It's quite a good episode. I quite enjoyed it, but it is weird, him going about to... And there's one special scene where he goes into the room where this time tilting device is, and there's all these weird light threads, like beams of light coming out of it, which they did with threads apparently, and it looks really great. I have to say, it looks fantastic. And there's all this stuff going on about Andre, so it feeds into the Le Diabolique kind of story. And I really like Vera Miles in this. She's a really powerful, strong character. She comes across really well. In fact, it's well acted. There's lots of weird Dutch angles, as is normal in The Outer Limits. The cinematography was done by Conrad Hill, who did a lot of the episodes. This was actually directed by Gerd Oswald, who, instead of Joseph Stefano, because the studio just wouldn't have Joseph Stefano directing. And so it goes on. It does resolve in an ambiguous way. And there's a reason this episode took so long to get to. Apparently the studio saw it. First, they rejected the original script outright, so it needed a bit of rewrite. But they then came back and said, can you modify this to remove the science fiction elements and make it much more a sort of dramatic psychological horror thriller? Because they had an idea of having a new anthology show called The Unknown, and they wanted to modify this episode slightly so it could be used as kind of a pilot for The Unknown. That was their idea. So there was basically it was given two endings. They were given double the production time. So in the there's a disappearance at the end. Hobart actually disappears into the time stream in the end of the Outer Limits version, but in the unknown version, let's put it that way, he kind of doesn't disappear. And there's a few other sort of plot differences. It's quite an odd episode. As I say, I really like Vera Miles. I thought David McCallum was solid. Barbara Rush played Leonora. She was quite good. And as I say, it's the final one. He died 3 months after this episode aired, so this was kind of his last gig in many respects. The name, the form of things unknown, is a quote from Shakespeare from Midsummer Night's Dream. I think it's Theseus. He's talking to Hippolyta, got that right. Which kind of continues a grand tradition of using Shakespearean or poetry quotes as titles for episodes, which we see a lot of in Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry loved his bit of Shakespeare. There's like Dagger in the Mind and things like that. There was lots and lots of different episodes of Star Trek with a Shakespearean quote, and this is before that tradition, really. This was aired before that, so it maybe picked out from here as an idea. I don't know. Maybe the writers at the time just like that sort of thing. I couldn't tell you. Yeah, a grand episode to sort of finish on. Just so unusual and weird. Probably one of the weirdest Outer Limits episodes. I'm not sure it resolves entirely satisfactory, because it kind of promises more than it delivers at the end, if you know what I mean. I quite like it, and this whole talk about time tilting and stuff like that. Touch of Frankenstein, touch of H.G. Wells. There's some interesting stuff going on. I quite like this. Now, as I mentioned, this is the final episode of Season 1. I am not going to go into Season 2 at the minute. I'm going to have a break from the Outer Limits. I consider the current run of shows I'm doing for Anthologic as Season 1 of Anthologic. And even though it's been going for 190 odd episodes, I still consider this Season 1. And I consider Season 1 to be... I want to cover the first episodes of all of the Anthology shows I can find. And I'm getting near the end. Mate, I say that, I've probably got another year of broadcast to do, but I am getting near the end. And I'm going to discontinue the Outer Limits into Season 2 and save that for Season 2 of this show. And I'm going to do the same with the Twilight Zone. When I finish Season 1 of the Twilight Zone, I'm going to discontinue that. Whereas the Night Gallery, I will be continuing, because I'm on Season 3 already. But there'll be much... As we're not dipping into the Outer Limits anymore this season, we'll sort of proceed a bit faster through the rest. So hopefully I'll get it all done by the end of 2024. That's kind of the rough plan, but I'm not going to make promises or adhere to anything. But this show, Anthologic, will have a Season 1, and it will be then a bit of a break, and then Season 2. But I just want to point out that Outer Limits will stop for now, but Season 2 will return at some point. So yes, I greatly enjoyed this one. I've enjoyed this season quite a bit. There's been some excellent episodes. There's been some very odd episodes, slightly disappointing episodes. I like the fact that sometimes it's comedic, sometimes it's horrific, sometimes it's just interesting, sometimes it's just weird, which is the form of things unknown, actually. Categorise that one as just a weird episode. And apparently, there are two versions that exist. There's this unknown version, which I couldn't track down, couldn't find, but it's got like plot points. But the body of it, the bulk of it is the same, exactly the same. So it's not like a whole different episode. It's just they've tweaked the ending specifically, I think, and some of the earlier sci-fi element mentions. But yeah, solid episode, just odd. So I'm going to stop there, but before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to